Hello, welcome back to Internet Dads episode 3. Rory.
I think this is the freshest I'm going to look now for a year.
Yes, that's very true.
I had a shave this morning. Probably won't do that again for a year.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, this is it.
I can't wait for the episode where you've just got a castaway beard, like full on Tom Hanks.
I was like that first time round. I
look
was,
forward to
honestly.
it.
I was in a terrible state. I'm now, just kind of like talking about this, the fact that there's another... It's the trenches, isn't it? I'm kind of going to war.
That's what people keep saying to me when I say I've got a 7-month-old, or it's 8 months now, I think. It's just the trenches. I think I'm just getting out the trenches, to be honest. I say me. I do more with our oldest, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
Is that the methodology? Have you done that? Have you divide and conquer?
Certainly in the mornings. Like when the oldest gets up, I get up with him. I sort him out. Obviously, ours on full on. Like she's still exclusively breastfeeding, so it's just I've got a baby attached to it at all times, basically. And I think I've mentioned before, but our youngest is big, and he's a bit of a lump, and he's starting to get even bigger. Like I'm noticing it every day. His face is growing. Like so, he's coming out, not out the baby stage, but like he's 7.5 months old, and he's wearing like 18 months clothes.
Oh, right, big boy.
Yeah, we're talking like outrageous.
Yeah.
We're
wearing. I can't relate. No, it's just so intense because do you know what? Particularly the period that you're talking about there. Like I mean this with love. I adore my daughter, but she is insane. Like actually,
well, they would be, wouldn't they? They haven't learned sanity yet. They have to learn all these things.
Do you know it's that irrational?
Is it even good if they do? To be honest, isn't it better to stay a bit mental like a baby?
No. I need an element of just try and be a touch rational.
Bit of order, bit of etiquette.
For example,
respect the establishment.
Respect the establishment. Absolutely. Like, do you know just that irrational thing? I find it very difficult. Like the other day, it was snowing. My kid's desperate to go out. I went, all right, that's completely permissible. I completely empathise. I want to go out. Do you know what I'm going to do before I go out there? I'm going to put a coat on. Do you know what you're going to do before you go? Why are you crying? Well, I'm not asking anything unfair here. I'm being totally rational.
You're the Neil Warnock. Enjoy it. Enjoy the snow by being disciplined.
Exactly. Put your coat on and you can go out and you can do anything you want. You make a snow angel. You launch a snowball at me. You do anything you want.
But interesting fact, Wim Hof, are you familiar with the work of Wim Hof?
Yeah, the guy that loves the cold.
He loves the cold. Yeah. And when he was a child, he was so attracted to the cold that he found himself just sitting, falling asleep in the snow to the point where he got hypothermia. And they wonder now, even though it was a bit ropey at one point, he was in hospital, if that is where he developed this genetic advantage in the cold. Interesting. I could talk about Wim Hof a lot. He's an identical twin. And when his twin was born, they didn't know he was a twin. So he was left in the womb by accident for a little bit. And there's another baby in there, pulled him out. But because he's a twin, it means they can compare genetically the two twins as to whether he has a genetic advantage. And the other twin doesn't have it. So whatever Wim Hof has, he learned.
Every now and again, you demonstrate you're a bit mad, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if
there's
mad,
a bit
right
mad.
word.
Yeah, no, I think mad in a positive.
That's
just
good
a
stuff.
little...
I just dropped some good stuff on you.
No, but we're talking about kind of snow, and suddenly it was like the passion of Wim Hof.
Well,
I could see it like
if you know,
coursing through your veins.
I had a little cold shower earlier.
Do you do it? Do you do all that cold?
I do it. It's so hard to do it now, isn't it? It's so easy to do your ice baths and your cold showers when it's warm. So easy. And I love it. And it feels great. In the cold, like when the water coming out is like that extra bit colder because the pipes are cold and it's a slog. But I do try. I haven't done it as
daily?
much recently. No, not anymore.
Do you have that metal bath thing?
No, I wanted to get I did want to get an ice bath. I'm still thinking about it, but it's just I know when the weather now is so horrendous. Yeah. I know when I get up. And I need it, by the way. Like my body, I still try and keep quite active. And that's the big thing I've noticed as I've got older is my recovery is so much worse. And I feel it in my bones if I do something. And the ice bath's great for that. But I know I'm never going to do it when it's as cold as it's outside.
Nor should you.
No, it's a bit mad. That is mad. But very good for you.
Mm.
But today, what I would like to talk about, I want to commandeer this episode a little bit. Talk about something I'm very passionate about, that I've done a lot of homework on. And I'm really keen to get your thoughts on. And it's very topical because literally today... Alex and I have sent off our choices for schools.
Huge.
You're a bit ahead of us on this. Obviously, you've already got a child in school. My oldest would be starting this September, or will he?
Why?
Because I'm very interested in alternative methods of schooling. I'm very interested in homeschooling, or as many people call it now, unschooling.
Is this passion shared by Alex?
Yes.
Does she support your vision here?
I would say I'm very fortunate in that a lot of the things I'm interested in that you may consider madness, Alex is mad as well in that same area. So we have a lot of shared interest in that regard. And I think it would actually be really challenging for our relationship if we didn't.
Yeah, no,
because
of
some of these
course.
things are quite
No,
alternative.
you need to try. I do think that's. I mentioned something like that to Victoria, that you do need to do that. You know, certain things, the way that I see the world, the way that where I find my enjoyment, it chimes with what she does.
Yeah.
It's so lucky because obviously I fell in love with her.
Yeah.
She may not have enjoyed particular spa holiday.
Yeah,
I like a nice spa. She could have wanted to go and travel around America in a caravan.
Exactly.
I would never want to do that.
You're obviously making an educated guess when you meet someone, but equally you're right, because over the long periods of time you're with someone, you change as people.
Yeah.
And one could change in this direction, one could change in that
So
direction.
you're aligned on at least the curiosity around homeschool.
100%. And I'll tell you why. And I also have got some interesting stuff to read out, because I did a little post on Instagram earlier and I said, look, give me I didn't make any opinion myself. I just said, give me your first thoughts on homeschooling versus traditional schooling. And I've got some that I'd like to share. But starting from my perspective, first exposure to it, I think, was I did this crazy baseball project a couple of years ago. I was going around the world playing baseball. And I had a coach, really, really great coach, and very successful within baseball, coached major league teams, World Series, had the ring, all that sort of thing. And now I got to know him. His name was Dave Jouse and his wife, Billy Jouse, and really interesting couple. And I can't remember who brought it up, but it turned out that they homeschooled their kids. Now, it's very common in sport, particularly if you're a baseball coach and you're moving around a lot, you're not going to have that maybe ability to go traditional routes.
Yeah.
They were also religious as well, and I think it's quite common in America in the religious sort of community to homeschool and sort of share resources. Not only were they super passionate about it, and they told me about all the advantages about it, and they told me about how their kids, who are now like my age, because they're a bit older, Billy and Dave, how they would benefit from being able to go into these baseball environments and these adult environments as kids. And you think about myself, who runs a football team, and all the environments I could expose my kids to if they're interested in it. That exposure at a young age makes me think of Jack Sullivan, who I know quite well, as the son of Dave Sullivan, West Ham owner. And the exposure he's had at a young age of being in boardrooms, and he obviously wants to be a football executive, and he's so far ahead of any competition.
Do you know what though, Spencer? If people listening to this and watching this are as ill-informed or naive about the topic as I am, is that what it means? Sorry, because when I hear homeschooling, I thought what it meant was that a parent effectively runs a curriculum at home. So the way that my daughter, who goes to school, will have English, maths, French, whatever. I thought that's what you would do, but just at home. It's not that. It's not that. It's taking them out into the world and letting them develop.
It can be whatever you want it to be, quite frankly. And different countries have different rules, right?
So would they set GCSEs?
You have to do, depending on what country you're in, you have to do like a standardised equivalency test. But your curriculum, what you teach and how long you teach, and there's so many things we'll get into today that I think, what I want to do, I haven't got an agenda here, because ultimately I haven't even made the decision myself yet. I haven't got a kid that's being homeschooled yet, and I may or may not do it myself. And I say myself, we may or may not make that choice.
Of course, yeah.
But I am clued up on it. I've read multiple books on it, and I've heard a lot of myths being dispelled. So the first thing we can get into is that one, really. So homeschool doesn't mean you're making a classroom at home and your kid is sitting in that classroom for the 8 hours they sit at
I literally thought that's what it was. I genuinely thought that's what it was.
The first thing that Billy and Dave told me when I spoke to them is what you achieve in a normal school in 8 hours, you can do in 1 or 2 hours with your kid when it's direct teaching, because they've got no distractions.
Tuition,
and you're actually getting, depending on who's teaching them, a better quality of one-on-one. People go to private schools because they have smaller classes. This is the smallest class you can get, right? We'll get to what considered to be the negatives and the adverse side of that later. But with the Billy and Dave example, I actually got to meet their kids. So I got to meet their kids who are now mid-30s. One of them's working as an executive in a Major League Baseball team. The other one, and they both went to university, by the way. They both went to traditional education in later life. And they were just good lads. You meet people and you think, and I was very much like, homeschoolers are going to be a bit weird, aren't they, if you've been homeschooled? And I met them before I knew they'd been homeschooled. And I was like, oh, these boys are sound. I like these lads. When I found out they were homeschooled, I was like, okay, so you can produce pretty interesting, exceptional kids as homeschooling. And I actually now am of the opinion it's the best way to produce exceptional people. Now, you could get it wrong and you might give someone a worse experience. And you've got to think about the child in all this, because some children might not be suited to traditional environment. Some children might really need that traditional environment and routine, of course. But, and I don't want to upset anyone here, because I went through traditional schools. I did it all myself. But I think depends what you want to achieve as a parent and what you think your child is going to be and going to have interest in. Because what I personally feel schools do is they produce and I don't mean this in a bad way, but a lot of the same people. You know, if you want your child to be exceptional in something, I think, or you think the child has an ability to be exceptional in something, whatever that thing is, could be a sport, could be mathematics, could be any one thing. Once you get to a certain age, you can specialize their education. They can push something to the point of expertise at 14, 15, 16. And if they then decide they don't want to do it, they still have loads of time to try something new. School doesn't really allow you to do that. School makes you get a very broad. So you want to produce a very well-rounded individual. I think a traditional school is a great way to do that. And there's lots of positives there. But if you have a child that has an ability to do something special with their life, I think the homeschool environment is vastly superior.
Are you allowed? Like, are you allowed to do it? Because I thought that almost the prerequisite of being a parent was that the child had to go to school. I thought it was almost like the law.
No, it's a law that they have to have an education. Right. It's not a law they have to go to school. Anyone can homeschool. And some countries it's easier than others. Some countries have stricter guidelines. Some countries are lot more loose.
Like here?
We're all right. So somewhere like Portugal, for example, they apparently make it a bit hard, and you've got to, even though you don't have to start school till you're 7 in Portugal, they will ask for a little bit more proof of what you're doing. What's your curriculum? What are you studying? Right. What are you following? Other countries is like, do what you want, just make them do this test at some point, and we're going to make sure it's all up to speed. But I don't want to go too deep into like a conspiracy theory. But when you probably learn about homeschool, you understand about school in general. School's only a couple hundred years old, right? People have only been going to school for a couple hundred years. Yeah, they weren't going to school before that.
Quite a long time.
Well, not really, in how long humans have been around. School, and this is really fascinating, and we won't dwell on this too much. So school comes out of this like Germanic sort of invention, and then America and everyone else picked it up. And you look at the American sort of rhetoric around this. I can't remember the president it was, but when they were trying to really convince parents to start sending their kids to school before it was a law, we're talking like over 100 years ago, well over 100 years ago. And they were trying to say, this is why you should send your kids to school. Right now, it's an obvious, obviously you need to get an education, but this wasn't the case back then. People were sending their kids into the workplace, so they were doing the family stuff, and different communities did it differently. The rhetoric, you can find this online, of the president at the time, was that with schooling, we want to create two kinds of humans, or Americans, or opportunities. We want to offer the very best of society, an elite opportunity to, become the elite of society and become our future leaders. And we want to offer the rest an opportunity to be taught how to be good workers. And this was a speech that if you look at it now, and potentially want to produce workers for the economy, right? Who aren't exceptional, who aren't making a lot of money, who are propping up the economy. And if you look at it now, it sounds like something from a dystopian novel. Yeah. What is crazy is it was so well received, because at that point, we're talking about a very agricultural-based industry and a very different way of life. The idea of guaranteed work and money in the bank, which is, and I'm not taking anything away from that, and economies are in a different place right now, was just, they were like, sign me up. I want my kid to be an average everyday worker, please. Yeah. And now I think the world has changed so much, and that is at the crux of my interest in homeschool, is how much the world has changed, how much the internet, which we know a lot about, internet dads, is allowing us to use that and be able to educate our children in different ways. Okay. I've unpacked a lot of information on you there.
It's very interesting. I just don't, for me, until this conversation, it just wasn't in my world at all. So this is like completely new to me. You're the first person that I've known consider it, because I don't know if anyone I know has even thought about it. The only other version of schools that I've known would be, there's a Rudolf Steiner school. The theatre school. I went to a theatre school. Yep. I've known kind of different variations of schooling. Yeah. But I've never known of it to be this. And like I say, when you first brought it up, I thought that it meant that the curriculum that you sit in school is what you would sit at home. You just do it with either your parents or tutors.
Yeah, so there's loads of different ways you can do it. You can follow the curriculum.
So in a way, what you could do. You know how you brought up, say, someone like Jack Sullivan, who's been exposed to. Yeah.
I don't think he was homeschooled, by the way.
Say somebody like him who from a young age was exposed to high business. Yeah. Effectively, what you could do, because you are a business owner, is you could just take your sons to work with you, and they would therefore almost ahead of the game, like via osmosis, just by being in the workplace, they would 100%. Absorb. So
ahead of the game. And also, that's not them not getting the education. It's because you're able to pack that into a 2-hour thing every day. Now, the reason schooling is 8 hours long, it's not for the children, it's for the parents.
To go to work.
So they can go to work. Yeah. Another reason that schooling was pushed so hard was to get women into the workplace. Because traditionally, women would stay at home, look after the kids. Yeah. And the men would go to work. I'm talking a very foregone, generation now, but I'm talking 100 years ago. they wanted to get women into the workplace because if you know about the economy, and I can get into a whole rabbit hole here, but it needs constant growth. You need the economy to always be growing in capitalism. So suddenly they realised we need to get half the population working that aren't working right now. How do we get these women into the workplace? We need to get the kids out of the house.
Yes.
Into work. So a lot of school has been created. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that there is things in place, principles in place at school that you might not have questioned in your life because you just think that can't be done differently, or that has to be for the children's benefit. The most common thing I got in my Instagram post earlier is about socialisation, right? You get less time. You get less time with other children, no doubt about it.
And establishing friendships. So like a lot of,
yes.
I know a lot of your friends are friends that you
school,
those relationships were created at school. A lot of my friendships were all cultivated at school.
Yeah.
That you would
lose that. But there's a replacement for that. And I think that is a common misnomer, is that you don't get any socialisation. It depends what your parents do. If your parents keep you in a room in your house and just teach you, then that's very true. You are going to be socially behind.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do it very differently. So if I was to imagine what homeschool life might look like for my kids, fast forward a few years, I would imagine that we have a couple of hours of tuition. Could be me, could be Alex, could be a tutor, could be in a group tutor that a load of homeschool parents come together and hire. That's very common. We went to Costa Rica for 6 weeks a few years ago, and that's what a lot of the expat schools are out there, is all the parents getting together, hiring essentially creating their own private school where they create their own curriculum completely. You've obviously got to pay for that. So it's not free, which is, not something that everyone gets the benefit of doing. I understand that. But homeschool can be done like that. And obviously the more parents you get, the cheaper it's going to be for you. And you can set that curriculum. And then what the rest of the day would look like, and this is very dependent on my ability to provide these time. I need to be able to available. Alex needs to be available. Whoever is. Let's say that my kid does love football. It shows an ability, or jiu-jitsu, or rocket science, or languages. Yeah, you can tailor that, and they can go and be doing that thing for an hour every day. Yeah. Not a games lesson once a week that is a sport that the school decides. They might hate rugby. They got to go outside and do it in the freezing cold. Yeah. Why? You got to expose them to everything. That's what my kids are going to be exposed to everything. We'll find out what they like.
And then I guess you see where they shine and what they have a natural aptitude towards.
Yes.
And then try and encourage that.
Enjoyment.
So where are you at the moment? This is very interesting because this is like a real life, current, like real-time conversation, isn't it?
100%. So we have applied for a combination of different schools in our area. We've gone to look at a lot. 2 schools that I went to quite a few different schools. So, and that has certainly informed my opinion on this, my own school experiences for sure. We've applied for a load of them. 2 of the ones I went to, a couple of others. I have my thoughts on this whole process, so we've got an outstanding, Ofsted rated outstanding school that I went to for a couple of years, state school, just literally 5-minute walk from my house. It'd be a very easy life for us if my kids went to that school. Right. But it's a religious school. It is Church of England. So I went there. I was christened. My mum is reasonably religious. She went to that church. Both my grandparents had the funerals in that church. So we have a genuine connection to that school. We certainly did in my mum and dad's generation. I don't do any of that. Nothing against people that do, but I don't do any of that personally. So we don't tick a lot of the boxes for that school, despite the fact that his father went there, despite the fact that my mum was on the PTA there, despite the fact that, we have his godmother went there, all these things. It's like a drop-down list. It's like, what's your priest's name? How often do you go to church? The priest has to write a recommendation letter. Do you pray? All these things. And I personally, and a lot of parents do fake that, right? They're just
they or at least they adopt religion in order to secure the school place. You didn't consider that?
I don't think that's right, personally. I'm no judgment if you've done that.
Yeah. Can you go to a religious school if you aren't religious?
Yeah.
So where you've said no to all of the above? Yeah. There is still a chance that you can be accepted.
I can get in, we can get in, and we're in the catchment area, which helps us, but it's not the top sort of decider. But I know there'll be children of other faith in that school as well, and they're very open to that. But they obviously will have an element of, we used to do Sunday school there, and it's a faith-based school. Right. Another school we applied for is secular, and as a result, quite sadly, I think there's a lot less funding, because you get a lot of funding from the church, so they don't have the same resources. But we've applied for that one as well. We don't know. You can't even choose. When you go through, you'll know this. When you go through the process, you don't get to choose your school. You get to say where you'd like to go, and then they use some sort of algorithm to decide what one you get. We might not get either of them. We might get given a different school.
How many do you select?
I think you can select up to 5. We've only gone for 2. We went to a couple others that we didn't really like for a number of reasons. So we've gone with 2 there, but we haven't filled out up the list of all the choices because we're still not decided we definitely want to send him.
So you've got 2. You've got 2 schools that you've put down for, and then the third option would be homeschooling. And you don't know even the order in which you want these things to potentially occur.
So the third option is homeschooling. We also went to look at a private school. I also went to that school for primary school.
Right.
This is to start my boy younger because they start him younger now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm more than happy to talk about this. It's £20,000 a year. Like some schools at different prices, of course. Now private schools, and they're all going up at the moment with VAT.
Yep.
And like, listen, I've done well out of YouTube. I can afford it. I'm going to be honest. I can afford it. But can I afford it if I have more kids? Can I afford it in 10 years? Because me and my brothers all went to different schools. One of my brothers had a full private school experience. I did everything. I did state school, private school, grammar school. Yeah. You know, I have opinions on that. My younger brother did something similar.
Couldn't you just look at your 2 children and pick your favourite and send that one?
Maybe. No, I think like my mum and dad they come working class background. You know, they're the hardest working people ever meet, and they got all of us at some point in our education into private school. And I think they're absolute legends for doing that. Not to say there's anything wrong with not going to private school, right? Yeah. But we were, and sounds like, you know, a ridiculous thing to say, but we were the worse off in private school.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And you do think about that, even though you're so lucky to be there. You do think about that as a kid, and then you think about, and it's, again, no one's at fault here, but the fact that my brother had about 7 more years of private school than I did.
Yeah.
You do play the comparison game as brothers, as 3 brothers. You go, oh, why did he get that? I didn't get that. And I went to a grammar school in the end, but it was like an hour and a half away from my house. So I wasn't thinking how lucky I was to go to this school.
No,
I was thinking I've been punished.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to avoid that if I can. If we're going to do that, everyone needs to go.
Total parity between the boys.
And you can't guarantee that because the prices are going to keep going up. You know, the different schools, different prices, but there's loads of things. You know, in private school, you don't have to be a qualified teacher to teach. You don't have to have any qualifications to teach in a private school. They get to choose who to teach.
Yeah.
Also, you get like 10 week summer holidays. You pay more and they teach them less.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, what you get is amazing facilities.
Yeah.
What you get is an amazing environment and lots of connections. And I know a lot of people that benefited from that. And I'm not saying we won't do it. I'm
and also,
completely open.
You know, some of the stuff that you were talking about, reasoning for potentially homeschooling, exposure to certain things, you were saying. Yeah. I think that those kind of things exist in a private school. So, for example, I don't know, I doubt in most state schools you're going to be exposed to fencing, whereas you probably are.
No, yeah, you're right.
I doubt you're going to be exposed to talking Mandarin, whereas in a private school you probably are. I think that sometimes the private system can at least open the door
100%
to. It could actually be the hybrid between state and homeschooling.
Yeah, I have thought about doing a hybrid approach and doing, if we can afford it, do you do private school for primary and then try and get them into a grammar school like I did in Essex where I live. There's a lot of good grammar schools. We're very fortunate. In my what was called a prep school, we not only did we have homework from a very young age, which a lot of other schools weren't doing. I learned a term of Greek when I was 9.
Yeah.
Latin. I don't know whether these things are useful or not is another question, but there is that 100%. And the connections, I think, are the main thing. You're around a certain, you know, different areas of the country have probably a different kind of, like where I come from. It's a lot of new money, if you like. It's a lot of bankers. So it's a lot of the guys I know who went to that school, got into that environment and that industry.
Yeah, they go down sheesh on a Thursday.
They do. They
go down sheesh on a Thursday with their new teeth.
Pretty much. That is pretty much it. But then you got amazing sportsmen that came out of that school.
Yeah.
Frank Lampard went to that school.
Oh, I know the school. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the school you went to?
Yeah, I went to primary school.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of where Lampard went. I know everything about Frank Lampard.
Yeah,
weirdly.
well, you would do, wouldn't you?
I know everything about Frank Lampard. Right, okay, so you went to that school. Right, yeah, it's a...
I mean, he's I don't think
cricket.
I don't think he would.
It's got a good.
It's got really good squash. One of my good friends, one of the best squash players in the UK, had a scholarship there through squash. They've had Olympic fencers there, this sort of thing. Like it's very good for sport. But I think I actually don't know. As I'm saying to you now, we haven't made a choice.
Okay, but this is great for this podcast because this is a real time problem, and ultimately there is a shelf life. You're going to need to make a decision within the next minimum.
Well, we don't know until for a couple of months what state school we might get awarded. We've got a spot in the private school if we want it.
But basically, in 9 months, this is definitive. This is done. In 9 months, you have to have made a decision.
Yeah, certainly. Well, yeah, you can always
You wouldn't want to
go.
put him in and pull him out.
No, we don't want to do that. But you could homeschool and then put them in if it
Right.
wasn't working.
Yeah, you could do that.
I had to start a lot of schools as like the new kid, and I would like to avoid that for them. But it did arm me with certain skills, I would say, as well, like being able to go into new environments quite comfortably, things like that. But I don't want to get away from the fact it's not lost on me. I'm very fortunate to be in this position where I can even entertain. To even take private school off the table, choosing between state school and homeschool, I'm very fortunate, and it's not, you know, we're not anticipating a world where we hire loads of help or anything like that. It's a lifestyle. It's whether we can create a lifestyle that would be a very big sacrifice.
It's amazing. I mean, and also it's so far removed from the way that I would do anything. Like, you know, honestly, Clementine just went back to school, and I swear to you, as I shooed her into the gates, off the back of the Christmas holidays.
You're like,
did you see it on on that Instagram account? I shooed her into the gates. She walked in. I watched her go, and I did the Marco Tardelli celebration. I did the Marco Tardelli celebration around the like parking lot. It was just it was like, oh my gosh, she's back at school. I can now just do something other than guess who.
No, I felt the same when, you know, our eldest started nursery again, and that's my biggest fear, I'd say, is even if you're a massive proponent of homeschool and the alternative way, I think there's a real benefit to learning the etiquette of school, to learning, you be quiet now, you're going to be taught something, because my boy doesn't know that. He's never done that.
Yeah,
really.
That's something that's quite interesting, because you know what I'm noticing from my little girl? Respect. She's incredibly respectful to everyone. Like, I mean, incredibly, like really polite to everybody. If she were to meet you, she'd almost be deferential.
Yeah.
She's like that to everybody bar me. But honestly, with me, she went to me the other day and she knew what she was doing because she kind of whispered it and waited for a reaction. She delicately went to me, "Shut up," right? And I looked, and I thought, oh my, like, I don't really know what to do, because this is the thing with being a dad, right? You don't realise it when you're a kid, but I'm completely powerless.
Yeah,
like I can't do anything. There's literally nothing I can do. That I love her so much. I went, if you ever say that to me again, I'm like, what are you going to do? There's literally nothing you can do.
Do you know, have you done, so I did my first ever sort of naughty corner the other day, and I was very interested in it.
Did it work?
Because, well, so here's the interesting thing. He was taking the mick a little bit, and I got to the end of my tether, and I was like, right, look, I've run out of options now. If you do one more thing, I'm going to have to send you to naughty corner. Okay, and he gives me a bit of lip, and I was like, right, naughty corner. And I was thinking about how I'm going to, like, where am I going to pick as a corner?
What is the naughty corner?
Like,
I don't know what to do now.
How do I explain it to him? And I go over there, it's the corner there. And he gets up, walks to the corner, sits down, facing the corner like this. And I'm like, you've been in a naughty corner before.
He's saying his first rodeo, is it?
I was like, where have you been in a naughty corner before? He's like, nursery. I was like, they use naughty corner at nursery. I was quite surprised by that. I had to ask some questions. But he was like, oh yeah, naughty corner.
Yeah, he's got this.
I'm fine.
I've got this. Yeah. You know, it's so weird, because I do this other thing with Clementine. I kind of go like this. I go 5, 4, 3, like get ready for bed. 5, 4. Have you brushed your teeth? And I'm doing the countdown, and she never lets me get to 1.
Yeah.
But what she doesn't know, but she's kind of clocking, is if I say 1, I've got nothing anyway. Where am I going to go? If I get to 1, you are going to know about it. If she ever lets me get to 1, sometimes I have to go really slowly as well. Yeah. I'm like 2,
1.5.
And if she were to just go, now what? I'm like,
so my way is I just make it he wants to, very competitive, and I feel like I must have fostered that in him already. So it's always rather than it being you got to win the trophy.
Yeah.
And if he gets it, he goes, "I've got the trophy."
Yeah.
And if I ever say I won and I got the trophy, he's like, "No, you don't get the trophy." So
do you think you can instill the respect? You know, like what I'm saying there about Clementine. So Clementine's respect is strangers. For example, if she were to meet you, she would definitely be incredibly. She would love it in here. She'd explore. She would be so polite and so well behaved.
Yeah.
To her teacher, she would be.
You think that's from school?
Yeah. What I'm saying, it's from school. It's not me.
Yeah.
That was something that I don't feel like I have the authority or the presence. I'm the fun one. The fun one to push the boundary.
You don't necessarily want to lose that either.
No.
You want to keep that connection. And I think there's a lot to be said there for having someone other than a parent teach a child, whether it's because they've got expertise in it and they have been trained in it, whether it's because they can be that little bit more, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but a little bit more neutral, a little bit more objective in the way they talk and operate with your child. And crucially, some kids just don't want to hear it from their parents.
No.
Like, you know, how many times have you seen this examples? You see it in sport, you see it in everything, where you'll be telling your kid to do something, they're just like, shut up. Some other guy comes along, goes, do this, and they're like, good advice, mate. And they look up to that person like they're an expert.
Yeah,
You're like, I know more than him.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I think you need that. That's why, for me, the perfect, if we can create the environment and do it properly, I think the perfect hybrid would probably be to start them in school. So if we got into that outstanding Ofsted in my catchment area school, we'd probably send them there, I think, if we're lucky enough to get there. Get the basis of an education of understanding social skills, but also understanding like the way classrooms work and how you should behave and how you should and shouldn't talk to people for a couple of years, whatever. And then maybe, if the situation allows itself, secondary school, be somewhere you're in an environment where there's other homeschool. And by the way, these homeschool groups are everywhere. You'd think they're not. Type it in, Facebook, whatever. You'll find people in your town that are going to the library every day. We bump into them. We've met some of them already. And they're doing their own little clubs. And then that is where the socialising comes from.
Part of a network anyway.
You do. So this is what I really like. You become part of a network. You get the socialising from it. You get the parental socialising as well. Because when you become parents, your mates are your kids' parents' mates, aren't they? But what I like about it, right, is generally, unless you're in a very specific school, like when you're at acting school, things like that, mostly what has put your child next to the other child and what is probably going to end up being really good friends of theirs is a postcode. Generally. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's a postcode. Absolutely no guarantee you have anything in common, any shared interest or anything. It's a gamble. When you do something so deliberate like this and you become part of a community which is much smaller, but by the way, it's a niche that's getting much bigger since the advent of working from home and all this stuff. The homeschooling community is like growing crazy amount. You have a shared interest overnight. Straight away, you know this kid's parents think a bit like me. Maybe for different reasons. And that is going to lead to probably more genuine friendships with the parents, potentially. And also maybe the sort of things your kids want to hang out with.
And for you are, I think that's an important thing to acknowledge. My network now, almost my friendship circle, stems from Clementine's friendship circle at school.
Exactly. That's what happens. It's unavoidable.
Yeah. And you are right.
They say that the most important single determining factor of your child's potential, whatever the word you want to use is the people they hang out with at school. The people they hang out with at school, because, and I'm not just talking sitting next to them in their lessons, I'm talking lunchtimes, I'm talking after school, their friendship group basically, because they're going to spend way more time with them than they are anyone else.
More influential over the child than you are.
Exactly. So if you're lucky enough to be able to somehow determine that environment in a good way, and if you can keep them out of environments that are toxic or bad, or maybe have characters you don't want them hanging out with, that's a huge decision you can make, but it can be incredibly disturbing to your schedule. Like, you know, if we do it, our life will be very different to a normal person's life. I'll have to find a way of working in and amongst that schedule. It can be very challenging. Like, we haven't got enough money to not work. Like,
when we get together to film an episode of this, in theory, your little boy could be here.
Yeah, so that's why I wouldn't do it at the sort of primary school age, I don't think. But I do think secondary school, I think that's where you can really, you know, people may or may not know this about me, but I am interested in a lot of alternative things. I'm a little bit of a non-traditionalist. And for me, the secondary school age is where a lot of the, I don't want to like discredit anyone or take away. I'm very like, everyone do what they want to do, live and let live. But in my opinion, in my brain, there's a lot of not dangerous ideas that can get into your kids in secondary school, but again, that influence, they can start to become someone that maybe is not the best version of them. And I think at secondary school, their brains are really like wondering about the world and their place in it. And there's a lot of everyone, and there's some of the comments we'll read out in a minute. Most people will agree, even if you're the biggest proponent of traditional school ever, most people will agree there's a lot of key life skills that aren't taught at school. There's a lot of key stuff.
The parents are so responsible. Even if you go down the very traditional route. The parents and the guideline and the values, I still believe, come from parents anyway. Yeah. Like I try and instill values that I hold dear into my daughter, which is why I know she would be very polite to you. Yeah. Terrible to me, a terror. But to you, she would be incredibly polite. And to her teachers, she would be incredibly polite. And to her friends, she would be generous and kind. Because that comes from me and my wife. Of course, the school will try and enhance that, but those values will be passed down from parents. And it's almost irrelevant what school she went to.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I shared something on Instagram the other day, and it resonated with me because I've always thought this myself. And it was like, I remember it was a light bulb moment. I don't know how old I was. I must have been at school at the time. And it came to me, and I was like, oh my God, that's so true. I always think of this, you're probably familiar with it, there's a play called Death of a Salesman.
Yeah, great play.
Yeah, so we studied that. I actually studied that twice because I changed school at sixth form. We ended up doing it again at the new school. I was like, sweet, I already got an A in this. And it's about Willie Loman, I think his name is Willie Loman. Dustin Hoffman plays him in the film fantastically. We actually did a production of it at school. And it's very much like Henry Miller, like sort of challenge to the American dream. Sort of saying it's not always cracked up to be. And, it's this thing we've all bought into in capitalism, whatever, what we think it is. And I remember reading that and thinking, I was like, yeah, this is American dream. I know we're not in America, but it's the same concept here. You can be anything you want to be. You can achieve anything. Of course, I believe in happiness. That. I've done things that I never thought were possible in my career. So, of course, I 100% believe in the idea of social mobility and being able to make your situation better and climb from wherever you started. Love that. What they don't tell you when they tell you that in a classroom, let's say you're in a class of 30 kids, what they don't tell you is statistically, if you're the exceptional kid in your class, the other 29 have to be non-exceptional. They have to be. For you to be exceptional, you have to have a vast majority of people not being like that.
Yeah, well, 50% of this country have to be below average intelligence, don't they?
Well, of course, because of the averages.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and so in society, I think we all dwell on this idea, and it all depends on what your politics are and all that. It's a rabbit hole, but we get caught up in this idea of we can be anything. But what we don't accept, we don't challenge enough, I think, is that the vast majority can't be.
Yeah.
And that's
I ain't going to be
a
basketball player.
But that's not because they can't, as in they're not able to. It's because the society systems don't allow enough people to thrive. So I'm a bit of a socialist, but the point I make is that I think school backs that up. And that's we're a capitalist country. That is the government that we have in place, etc. They're going to have certain, rules and foundations that allow that to prosper. And there's a lot of people listening to this probably think I'm talking nonsense and don't agree with my side of things. It's just my opinion. But if you are interested in alternative ways, there's other ways to do it. Should we take a look at some of the responses?
Yeah.
That I put out there, because the biggest response was no social. They're not going to get any social exposure. They're going to be a weirdo, basically. I think that can be true. We talked about this already. If you don't give them the opportunities to socialise. But I've got some really interesting. So the first one I'm reading here. It's not scientific. I asked everyone what they think about homeschooling versus unschooling or homeschooling or traditional school. Not scientific, but I guess homeschooling means you miss out on class parties and school trips. I mean, that's part of the social aspect. Yeah. You can do trips with other homeschoolers.
Yeah.
You can. There's even some schools that allow you to come in for certain things. There's a lot of people saying about lack of social skills. There's some really interesting ones. Someone here saying they were homeschooled, benefited me in the short term, but never made friends. So that's obviously a really important part of it. And I love hearing from people that have actually done it. Avoid unschooling. You can't learn things by osmosis, is what the MC Hammer is saying. Now, this is a really interesting point.
The MC Hammer?
The MC Hammer.
Oh, right. 18. I thought, oh my God. What?
No,
the guy who sung You Can't Touch This messages you.
I know, he's changed his words to you can't learn things by osmosis. No, so...
He was very religious. His child would have got into the religious school.
Okay.
Sang a song called Pray.
There you go.
Just to make it today.
I don't know that one. Yeah. No, good. The classic.
Good tune.
Everyone learns differently, right? This is the other thing. School doesn't really allow for standardized testing. You compared to you. You can be really intelligent, amazing kid that doesn't learn in that way and struggles, and you might have dyslexia, ADHD, or be neurodivergent in some way. And traditionally, maybe we're getting better at it, but traditionally in school, you're just sort of in the corner with the less what they deem to be intelligent kids, and that is dangerous as well because it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they test you in a way they choose. Say they. It's not a conspiracy. It's just a school. The curriculum. They choose. These are the ways we want to test you, and it's the most. You'd like to think it's been honed over years to be the best way of testing you on the things we deem important: English, maths, verbal reasoning, whatever these things are. Right? If you fail on those things and you struggle comparatively to your classmates, and they then start doing sets based on intelligence, you are then put in a class with other children that they deem to be less intelligent. Who are you going to learn from in that class? We all get better by being around people that are better than us and people that challenge us. I did pretty well in school, and the reason I did well in sixth form is I went to a very good grammar school, and I'm competitive. Honestly, it's why it's not because I was super smart, it's because I didn't like being embarrassed. And these kids were so smart, and I had to work so hard to keep up with them. But that's just my personality, and it worked really well for me in terms of getting grades. But it was because I was around people that were smarter than me. If someone else had decided, you're not as smart as them, I'm going to put you in this, I wouldn't have had that exposure, and I would have done a lot worse, hands down. Like, no debate there. So the setting, the putting people in intelligence levels allows them, it allows the top ones to prosper and the ones at the bottom to never get out of that.
Yeah,
You've got to have an alternative way of doing it.
I do see the issue.
I got a really interesting response from a good friend of mine who is a teacher at a private school. And he sent me a long response. He said, traditional schooling expects you to be good across a broad range of subjects and focus on knowledge rather than skills. Skills are worked on along the way, but if you lack writing or comprehension skills, GCSEs can be a real struggle and not necessarily an indication of intelligence level. Asking children to study a number of subjects they don't find interesting or enjoy leads to less effort in those areas. When you present results of GCSEs, employers or education providers are interested in the whole set, not just the specifics. Required adult knowledge, such as pensions, taxes, mortgages, are never covered in detail, which we all know is to be true. Homeschool requires excellent discipline from parents and children, but allows the freedom to create your own curriculum. Question mark is, how do you transfer that to a qualification to allow the child to enter formal education or the working world? So some of the things I've read, universities, they obviously have different principles, different rules, if you like, but a lot of them love taking homeschooled people in. They still have to have the grades, they have to have got the GCSE or the A level or whatever, but they find, done properly, that homeschooled children are the most keen to learn. Right. They've been trained to learn in things they enjoy, and therefore they have a different relationship with learning, and some of them go on to have some of the best results. The other thing is, you take it back a few hundred years, right, to when all these people that we celebrate, and I've read a lot of books about homeschooling are American, so a lot of my links are American references, but these people that are just adorned, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, all these guys, none of them went to school. None of them went to a school.
Although that would have been in an era where school wouldn't have been.
Of course, but my point is, it's still produced. Yeah, like we've got caught up in this idea that you have to go to a school to become exceptional. My thesis is, if you want to be exceptional, don't go to school. Now, don't not work, don't not learn. Yeah. Just to finish what he said, there's an increasing neurodiversity in the population, meaning all kids will learn and respond differently. The challenge in any setting is, how do you support neurodiversity and how do you test their abilities in a way which allows them to show what they can do whilst keeping the test standardized to allow comparison from student to student? And I said to him, good stuff, but is comparison necessary? As we all know, comparison is the thief of joy. But
comparison is the entry point to university, isn't it?
Yeah.
How clever are you compared to the average person sitting this test?
If you want to go down that route. And I went to university. Yeah. Now, I don't know if I would have if I was 18 now, because I don't think I could have afforded it.
Although comparison is the metric that we use for everyday life as well. How do you get a job? You're the best person available for the job comparatively.
Yes, but you have to compare it. You have to compare them based on standardized testing. So if, let's say me and you are both applying for a job, does the employer, and I think this is becoming more increasingly factual that they do this less and less, have to go, you got these GCSEs or A levels, you got these, I'll take you because you got better ones. I don't think that's happening as much now.
No,
I think there's so many other ways to prove your aptitude. And it completely depends on the industry you're in. If you're in a creative industry, an industry where you can show some sort of initiative, you can be doing stuff. A great example, I've got a really good example of this. One of my good friends, I won't name him, but he's a Norwegian guy. And if you followed me for a while and you're in the FIFA scene, you may know who he was. He didn't get on with school. Very clever boy. Didn't get on with school. Had issues there. Wasn't enjoying it. I think he left school about 13 or 14 in Norway. Ended up getting signed off by a school sort of counsellor. Said, like, we don't think school's right for you. We're going to give you permission to not go to school anymore. Right. He loved editing. He was obsessed with editing videos and learning about editing. Talking high level stuff. So what did he do? And this is about obviously 10, 15 years ago. But he went on YouTube and he went online and got some of these tuition courses and these things you can learn online now, and became exceptional to the point where at 16, he went to go to university to study editing, high-level editing at media university. First day, talking pretty basic stuff. He's like, this is the stuff afterwards he goes to lecture. This is the stuff I want to learn. When do you learn this? He's like, you don't learn that here, mate. That's like stuff you learn in the field. Like, I don't even know how to do that. Yeah. Okay, drop out of uni, then crack on. He ends up working for EA Sports, editing the trailers of FIFA videos, doing some high-level stuff at 16, moves to England, starts doing that. You know, he was ahead of people at 25 who went the traditional route. Yeah. Now, that's an exceptional case, sure, but some people will go, he's a dropout, he left school at 14.
No. That's shining.
He's shining, but he's finding his, he didn't enjoy school.
Yeah,
he found his people and his way of doing things and his environment.
Do you know what, though? Isn't that what this whole conversation is about? Finding your niche, finding your edge, finding where you belong.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, the general consensus of the country, in fact, would suggest that the way that you go about finding that niche is via school.
Can be.
That's the general consensus.
It can be, and I'm not getting away from that. I do think though there's a lot of people that never find it, or never find their passion. They end up finding a career and a vocation, but they never are allowed to even entertain the idea of working in a field they're passionate about, like you and I are both so lucky to do.
Yeah,
because they're not given that opportunity.
That's because as individuals we're completely unemployable in the normal world.
True, and that's what happens though. At some point, you go one or two ways.
Yeah.
At some point, you either go, okay, I'll play the game they're telling me to play, get the grades, and then you don't do the things that everyone else does.
Yeah.
Or you go, I'm going to go a different route.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying one's better than the other. My thing is what makes you happy. If you're happy in that space, go for it.
Do you know what I think the bottom line here is? You and I have both ultimately in our older life done the unconventional thing.
Yes, 100%.
Effectively, all you're doing is you're extending the courtesy that you've given to yourself, to your children at a young age.
Which I'm very aware might not be right for them. My mum and dad are the opposite.
Then just sling them in. If ultimately, if you think,
you might need it.
Yeah, one of my boys in particular needs to be in the traditional school system. You just write it, don't you?
This is one of the biggest challenges. I don't think you relate to this that I find with parenthood, right? Is we go through what we experience as kids, and everything's about what happens to you as kids. Whatever you go on to do in life, whatever hang-ups you have, whatever, it's all about childhood, right? Childhood's so important. We go through whatever we go through, and we become the adults we are because of what we went through.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much you think about this, but I think about this stuff a lot. I'm not saying I want my child to be a certain way. I just want him to be happy.
Yeah.
So if he shows a different kind of mindset to me, a different kind of personality, and he's not as neurotic as I am, shall we say, he might just not care about some of this stuff and just want to go to school with his mates. And I'll support that 100%.
Yeah, that's nice.
He might want to do a job that I hate the idea of doing. And if he's happy, I support that 100%. But what I'm worried about is because I am a certain way and Alex is a certain way and we think a certain way, what we're not doing is creating a child in our image because they're going to have a completely different childhood as a result of putting them in this environment that we think about now. I was never thinking about the idea of homeschooling when I was at school.
No.
I was thinking about just life cracking on around me. Yeah. If you have these parents that are saying, you're going to homeschool because you're going to be like this, what does he end up like? I don't know.
No.
Is it better or is it worse? I don't know.
I think that it's a noble thought. It's a noble thought from you and Alex. I think it's a very generous way to consider it because it's harder for you. Like the easier thing to do is to send your child to school.
Yeah, certainly.
And not purely for selfish reasons. I view it that traditional school is never really thought about it until this conversation. To be totally frank, I just my daughter went to school.
Yeah,
but also selfishly, I really like the routine that school brings. I really like the idea of having her in school.
Yeah, and
again, to be totally frank, whilst I do think it is correct for her, it's also enough correct for me.
Yeah.
It works for me.
But you never know what's going to happen. I'm sure Clementine is doing really well there and takes to it. Some kids don't. Some kids don't have bad experiences at school.
Yeah.
Some kids have, one of the comments I got back from Instagram was something, it said something like, getting your head kicked in when you got something wrong and were an idiot was really helpful to me to realise how to behave. And I don't know if he was joking or not, but there is an element of that. Is you'll get put in line if you're out of line and you're doing something wrong. But there's also an element of traumatized.
I don't think getting your head kicked in is ever
particularly
beneficial.
Hopefully, he didn't actually get his head kicked in. And I never had my head kicked in, but I definitely had some not great experiences at school.
Yeah, so did I.
That probably have contributed to this opinion I have. But I also had amazing things at school, and so much of what happened to me at school is made the path for my life. So
there's a stigma of it. Worry, not worry you, but do you know how this is a very, really from my experience here, very rare thing. So ultimately when one of your sons is playing football and goes to the local football team to play football, you'll become friends with the dad. Your name. What school does he go to? He's a good player, your boy, and he's central midfielder. What school does he go to? You're then gonna go,
School of life, mate.
Yeah, and they're gonna go, he's fucking mad.
He's a nutcase.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably going to happen. And they think I'm a nutcase already anyway. But there is that. Or they might be intrigued.
Does it work? No, but is it? Have you even thought about?
I've got a football team called #United, Rory.
Stigma.
I clearly don't care about what people think about
I
me.
love it. I absolutely
I do think that the society is changing. I think this will always be niche, but I think it's becoming a bigger niche. I think more and more people are thinking about it and even getting interested in it. And like my brother is convinced that we're not going to do this. He's convinced that it's just something I'm interested in, but ultimately school is too convenient. He might be right, but it won't be through the want of really exploring it.
It's good to explore, absolutely. Yeah. And do you know what's great for me and our friendship, and also for this podcast? there is a real-time shelf life to this. Like, we are going to find out.
Yeah, we're going to find out.
You're living this debate, this problem, this question that needs solving.
Yeah.
And over the next few episodes, it will come around very quickly.
Yeah, it will.
You're going to have made a decision.
But that's only for the first part of school, isn't it? We don't know what... I might then change something in for secondary school, whatever. But yeah, we'll certainly see it play out. And I do want to just caveat everything I've said today with I 100% fully respect every opinion on this matter. And if you go to a different route and you think everything I said sounds awful, then great. If that's good for your kid...
Nothing you've said even suggests that you aren't totally open to every angle.
Yeah.
Nothing suggests that at all.
So let us know what you think on this matter. Maybe you've got children of that age or coming to that age. Maybe you had a homeschool experience and we can follow up with this and learn more about it. But yeah, it's certainly going to be part of our lives. School is not going anywhere, is it? It's going to be part of our lives, whatever shape it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, thank God for it.
Yeah, it is quite useful for the parents' school. I'm not going to deny that.
Get in there.
Celebration.
See you at R3.
Right, thanks for watching, guys. Another episode of Internet Dads coming soon when maybe Rory will have a second daughter.